Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided.
This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlawn Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlawn Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Welcome back to Access to Democracy. I'm your host, Allan Miller, and we've had a lot of changes lately. And my co-host, Rick King.
Wow, I got promoted.
Well, you actually hosted a show, the COO of Thomson Reuters, and we owe Rick a lot, including the studio and our visits to Target Field and other things. And he's been a great supporter of ours, and it's always a pleasure to have him here. He actually hosted a show which interviewed me.
That was a lot of fun.
A few months ago, with all sort of surprise gifts and all, and it's always a pleasure. So, how have you been?
Fantastic. It's good to be in a warmer Minnesota today than last week, where we were frigid already in November.
Sharon and I were talking about that driving over here. That's the worst November that I remember since we're here, and that's 17 years, 18 years.
According to my friend Mark Seeley, climatologist, meteorologist from the University of Minnesota, it has been since 1995. That was the last worst November that we had.
Okay, and we weren't here then.
That's right, so there you go. And not only that, somebody asked the question, which I thought was interesting. Does a white November lead to a brown December? And he went back through all of the times when there actually was a white November. I think there was 43 times, and only 6 times did that lead to a brown December. So
we'll take our shot, though.
There we go. I think we're going to be looking at some snow in December.
Rick has been here, what, 8 years now?
In this facility, I've been here, I think, just over 8, yeah.
But I don't know anybody who knows more people who have gotten more involved in the community, who's gotten more involved with charities than this man. And he's been the head of the high-speed task force on broadband. He's a member of the Metropolitan Airport Commission. He sweeps up nights here around Thomson Reuters. So
absolutely. You know, I think that's a very important point. So I've lived in 13 different states, and to get involved in things, I probably have a view about different states and how addressable and accessible the governments are in those states for somebody who moves in who hasn't grown up there. Because a lot of the people that get into government elected office and so forth, which I don't want to do that part, but they have been there for a long time. And they built over a long period of time their connections that allow them to do such things. I found Minnesota to be one of the most open states, one where it's really not a reach at all to talk to the governor. They're accessible. They're not hidden behind a lot of things.
We found the same thing, which is one of the things that made this show be able to exist this long. I mean, we're going into our 16th year here, and people have just been wonderful.
And you came from New York, which I think is one of the places where the elected officials seem to be behind more handlers than in almost
entirely
any state.
Different mentality.
Yeah.
And even in terms of living and neighbors and things like that, it's an entirely different mentality. New Yorkers are much more insular, and that's not what we found here, to our happiness.
And it's not, I don't think it's really a good or a bad, it's just different. And so to move into Minnesota and to choose to get involved in some of these, the nonprofits or in some of the government aspects of it as what would be an outsider to a lot of people after a short time is relatively easy here. What you need to do is be dedicated, interested, sincere, honest, and all the things, and they go, okay, you're the kind of person that we want to put some energy into these things, and they give you a shot.
And you took it.
Well, it's fun, that I have a great team to work with at work. I have a really good day job. I have people that my bosses and the board are supportive of me doing things outside of the day job, and it's the icing on the cake.
Now, one of the things Thomson Reuters has gotten involved in, and you're certainly all over the world now, Westlaw for so many countries, I've lost track, but you also have a mission in China. And as a matter of fact, you have a Chinese attorney here, author, attorney, who's been on the show a couple of times, Chang Wang. And Chang just wrote a book about Minnesota for people in China.
He did. So we have the book. We have the book here. I think it's kind of interesting. It's really the first book, a Chinese language book about the state of Minnesota. So it's quite interesting. It's a bilingual book. So for those of you that might not, well, at least my part's bilingual. I wrote a foreword for it. You can read the English part of it. You and I probably don't read Mandarin as well as we used to.
No, I didn't. Can we move in on that and show the cover a little bit closer up?
It's a great book, and Chang is a unbelievably talented individual who works tirelessly. Here he's been here for quite a while. His job is to work with institutions that use Westlaw and help train them, and he's also a person who's an expert on our products and our services, and he'll reach out, and he does a lot of work with different universities. Chung is a native Chinese, and his wife is as well. They're both now naturalized here.
She's very talented in her own right.
Yeah, she's an artist and phenomenal artist, been on display and so forth, and her work has been on display. And Chung graduated from the University of Minnesota Law School, so it's a Chinese native with a green card in the U.S., trained as a U.S. attorney, who goes back quite a bit to China to teach the rule of law in China and around the Westlaw products, because China is very interested in how to develop their own rule of law and how they can codify things similar to the U.S. So it's pretty phenomenal. And I've been able to be a guest lecturer in some of his classes different times. I've actually done it in Switzerland and China with him at certain times, and so he's got a fantastic reputation. And
a lot more Chinese speak English than people over here speak Chinese.
Well, I believe actually that if you went on per person, China has more English speakers than the United States has.
I'm not surprised.
And that's just a population number, but
that's where the world is going.
They're very interested in the world of business and capital pursuits. They need to speak English. They know that, so that's what they do. But that makes them a couple steps ahead of a lot of us, because they're right at the gate multilingual in that regard.
Well, it's interesting because West Publishing, the precursor to Thomson Reuters, really was the world's leading publisher of American legal documents. And right out of this building, or the next building, 64 million copies of books were published every year. Now the world is changing. The world has moved to Thomson, or Thomson Consumed West, which is now Thomson Reuters, but books are not what they were once. When I was practicing law years ago in New York, I saw it coming. I had one of the first Westlaws on Long Island, and I tried to entice the book salesman into just selling me covers for the library to impress the clients. I said, we don't need anything in the books anymore. What we need is the Westlaw. And
Well, you had an idea there. The only time that I know that we ever do that is for Hollywood. We actually, if some of those law shows, which it's either a medical show or a law show, right? Or a reality show, if you can call it one. But the law shows tend to have those law libraries as backgrounds of books in the office or books in the conference room, and a lot of times they're the cover with a styrofoam insert.
they're becoming obsolete,
They sure are.
as people have told me I'm becoming, but be
Well,
that as it may.
you're not, you adapt faster than a book does, but you're right. The book sales don't grow every year. They go down every year. They're not gone by any means, but people consume all the information electronically.
Now, was this published here?
This was published here.
So are you publishing books here now in
this
other
book-
language?
No, this book was not published here.
Oh, it
Here,
wasn't.
as in Thomson Reuters. This one was published by a third party in the U.S.
And what about Thomson Reuters? Are they publishing in other languages now also?
We do. We publish a bunch of books in different languages, depending on the requirement. We can do that. We do some third-party work if it's in certain formats and page counts and things like that. The group that does the books is very active in once you're running the press for 3 shifts, you try to get as much into them as you can.
Now, one of the things we've heard about talking about the internet now, there's been a lot of talk about net neutrality. In
yeah.
fact, Al Franken has been a big advocate for net neutrality, Senator Franken. Why don't you explain what net neutrality is?
Oh, that's going to be a dangerous one because I think this is there's different interpretations. But so this is a very interesting point. The idea, I think, generally of net neutrality is that everybody has equal access to the internet. So from a consumer point of view, it would mean everybody got pretty much equal access. From a company point of view, it means that whether you're a small company or whether you're a big company, you have equal capability to sell your wares across the internet. What's brought this forward, not the most recent, but previous to that, is that video services like Netflix tend to consume much more of the bandwidth than do a lot of other services. And what Comcast started to do as a policy was regulate the speed of certain companies that were consuming more than their fair share of bandwidth in Comcast's point of view. And the idea of net neutrality is you don't do that. Everything's
Everybody
equal.
should be equal, right?
But then the next thing that happened after that was certain companies who wanted to consume more bandwidth would go to a provider like Comcast and say, we'll pay a premium price if you give us, we get to go on the fast lanes, and we're not prohibiting anybody else from it. We want to pay for access at a predictable speed and not be held up by others. So it's like if you think of the internet as the internet would become it's almost like a paid highway. So it's the toll road that limits trucks.
So the corporations could use the Autobahn, and the average user would be on 35W.
Or on one of the small streets with traffic lights and pedestrians and bicycles and all that would slow things down. So Senator Franken would be in net neutrality terms here. He would say that you don't pay to get a faster lane. Everybody gets to use the Autobahn. Everybody gets to use the side streets. You've got to collaborate with each other.
Pretty much like radio, really, because the radio bands, a station can be more powerful. AM 950 is 5,000 watts, WCCO is 50,000 watts.
Yep.
But it's the same in terms of when you turn on your set.
Right. That one has to do, of course, with the reach of the signal, and then theoretically anybody could have a stronger transmitter. But if you do that on certain of those bands, you actually encroach on the other frequencies that are around it. So you have to be careful of separation in the frequency band. But the net neutrality issue went to court, and will be certainly back in court again. But now recently we've seen the FCC become more active in this, and we've seen President Obama actually put out some policies and direct the FCC about what you're going to do about net neutrality. And in this regard, a lot is going on in this area. If you think the federal government is still putting money into broadbands, particularly schools, our state put, I think the number was $10 million last year out of the surplus into extending broadband more rurally. Governor Dayton has said that one of his 3 priorities for some of the surplus is to put more money into the rural broadband community, and we have a state executive broadband director now that's charged with dispensing that, which requires matching from companies.
Because people in the small areas that are outstate haven't been able to get the same service that we have here.
That's right. That's right. So,
or pay as much as I do each month for my broadband
that's right.
service.
Mostly in the metro we have better choices, but there's pockets in the metro that don't have good service. So that's the whole universal service thing, which Governor Dayton ran on. Border-to-border broadband was the term that he ran on in his first election. I think he's really determined that he wants to make some progress in that.
And we've made big strides in that since you headed the Broadband Commission.
Well, we kind of laid the roadmap that said here's where we are, and we got a goal in statute, which, by the way, is due in 2015, so we'll see how the report card comes out. But they are making some good progress toward the goal in terms of making universal coverage and speed at a minimum. We're not doing quite as well accelerating our being in the top 5 in the country, where everybody's building out, so we've got our work cut out for us.
And we are in top 5 in so many areas and so many things that we really should be in terms of communication also.
We're just a bit above the middle of the pack in the U.S., which doesn't seem like the place where you should be. But anyway, that's something that I think maybe this session with the surplus would be able to chip away a little bit more on it. The interesting debate with all these things coming together, the net neutrality, there's another aspect with that we can go into, but the one that I was going to here is the idea that people are starting to talk about whether broadband is in fact a public utility or is it not, and that in statute today, the FCC classifies broadband as services, not telecommunication services, so it regulates them in a much lighter, almost non-existent fashion versus telecom, which it regulates pretty heavily. And there are funds and fees that gets charged to telecom. Some of the funds and fees for universal phone coverage to get phone coverage out to the rural areas are actually now being diverted to get broadband to rural areas, interestingly, because honestly everybody has a phone now, so that universal service fee is almost not needed anymore.
Landlines are disappearing.
Right.
Cell phones in everybody's pocket, as we see. I mean, even confrontations with the police are fully photographed.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's incredible.
They're on, actually, it seems like the nightly news that we used to get our information from is actually watching social media and getting the news rather than news gathering. You're basically watching what people are gathering. People are crowdsourcing.
It's been an incredible turnaround
Is the journalists
in my
of today,
lifetime.
right?
We used to have party lines on the telephone.
That's right.
You'd pick up the telephone and somebody was talking because you were sharing the line with other people. Today, it's a whole different society.
Today you have multi phones, the cell phones. But anyway, the idea, the real interesting debate here will be that does the government change the way they're looking at broadband? If broadband becomes a utility, like a water utility, like an electric utility, becomes more regulated and they try to push it out universally, is that good or is that bad? And it sort of pits the people that say, free market, investments and all that kind of stuff, and then let the subsidies go to the places where there isn't capital payback.
Well, Franken would say everybody should be equal. Rand Paul would say government should keep its nose out.
Right.
And we have that philosophical political divide. So it'll be interesting to watch what happens.
The president has clearly come down on the side of making it a public utility. He's pretty much directed the FCC, which is independent. He's directed them to draft rules. The problem is that the rule, the telecom law that they're basing all these interpretations on is from 1932.
We need a new law. And 2016 is rolling around. I don't know what Hillary's position is on it, Hillary Clinton, and I don't know what Jeb Bush's position on it. And I 2 years ago predicted that those would be the candidates, and I still think so. So we will see.
I think your prediction's looking good.
In another vein completely, the Metropolitan Airport Commission, of which you are a member, is now opting to build next to the post office at the airport a large hotel. Not them, but take bids
Right.
and competition on a hotel there, which almost every other large city airport has, so that you can literally, as a matter of fact, one of the projections I saw had a walkthrough, a skyway from
Right.
the hotel right into the airport.
Right.
Great convenience for travelers. I have used that on occasion also. So where are you on that?
Well, we have at least approved for the staff to go do the research and to go out and talk to firms to get ideas back about how they would build such a hotel and run one. And we've included the idea of putting a skyway in that would walk them from kind of the middle of the field to the C concourse, which is the one as you're driving in the road, is on the right-hand side, and then the hotel would be on the left-hand side as you drive in. We assuming we get back good bids, I think the commission would favor doing this. It's there's so many places, like we have so many flights because we have connecting flights. We're a hub. People come in, they meet, they leave. I mean, the convenience of doing all that in an airport hotel is pretty strong. And then you also get all the flight disruptions. And when there's flight disruptions, if you've ever been to the airport or been disrupted, our airport, they roll out little mats for you to sleep on the
That's
floor,
right.
which is, okay, that's better than in the chairs. But, a hotel would take some of those people and take care of them. And I tell you, a lot of times when I'm flying around Europe, I stay at those hotels because I'll get there, leave on an early flight, and I'll stay at the airport hotel because I won't have to get up that much earlier and
Don't
go
worry
there.
about a taxi or limousine or transportation.
Get
or
right out of
anything.
there right away and get a start on things. Or if somehow you are stuck somewhere, or you fly in an overnight flight and you come in early and you want to take a shower and clean up before you go to your work right away when you get off those overnight flights, you just use the airport hotel. So there's a lot of great advantages, and so I'm in favor of it as long as we get a reputable firm to build and run it, and that they can make money, and then we'll make a little money as well.
And that's a good thing. What people who don't fly, and I don't know if there's anybody who doesn't fly much anymore, but really don't appreciate is the change in the terminal at, particularly Terminal 1. It has gone from what I would call a small town type terminal to really a very, very classy operation. Good restaurants, good stores. The whole turnaround in the last decade has been incredible.
I think the staff has done a really good job, and it's all about getting people in, getting the right kind of operators in there that have some vision and want to bring some good things to there. It also starts with the idea that make sure you control the pricing so the pricing isn't exorbitant. The rules at the airport are it has to be street price plus no more than 10%. It can't be higher than that. So we do.
Well, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
but
we
that's
do
a good
hidden
thing.
price checking. I mean, the vendors know we have that. We do that, but we check the prices comparably, and we've got some really good
Well,
new restaurants.
spies are very big in this society now, so
Well, we want to make sure that, that we're not letting the prices go out because you've got a more fixed group, less competition.
and you have the opportunity to have a first-class meal in the terminal if you wish.
Yeah, and I would particularly point, there's a lot of really good franchises that are all over the airport, but Concourse G has been built out over the last year by a group called OTG, which has put some really interesting concepts in. They're the ones that have the iPads where you can order close to the gate and they'll deliver the food to you. So it's a really interesting concept. The other concourses are all Host is the company that runs them, and they have some fantastic places, including my personal favorite, which is Chick-fil-A.
It's not my political favorite, but it's
Politically-
well thought of.
Politically, Chick-fil-A is not of my thinking, but I do respect the fact that the person has a really good company and a really good restaurant, and frankly, they believe their mission, their views, their political views, their religious views, are so strong that none of their stores in the world are open on Sunday.
Well, good for them.
So you're making a statement versus the capitalists.
We have a minute and a half. Tell us what's down the road for Thomson Reuters.
Well, I think we're going to see big things with how the professions, we aid the professions with workflow. It's not just about information anymore, but it's bringing tools to analyze that information and combining it not only with our information, but those that are in the firm already and those that are on the outside web, bringing them together in tools to help people analyze and model things. So it's about this workflow idea and collaboration with their peers. Believe it or not, even lawyers today share information with each other.
That's a whole different world of practicing law also, it really is. And as firms are consolidating and or folding, the world is really evolving so rapidly that it's hard to keep up with it. And Thomson Reuters has to do the same thing.
You do.
To be competitive.
You do. I'll tell you one thing. All parents should encourage their kids to really work on teams and be very collaborative. That would be the lifelong skill that I would say seek it out.
And to all my cinema students who are all over here, we have a collaborative industry also, and it's a good thing to remember. Rick King, I thank you so much, as usual, and I hope you come back and host a few.
Absolutely, Alan.
Thank you.
Glad to do it.
Sir.
And have